totally connected and they can forget what those are, right? They're not part of the day-to-day. But here, it almost to me feels like the U.S. Constitution. It's something that's been written on very, very important paper. It's revered. All employees know it. And if we were to change it, it would be a massive organizational effort and massive internal debate to make a shift. And there's really been only one change to the mission since it was written, 70 years ago. And that one change where we're talking about the personal worth of employees was modified to not just say personal worth of employees, but personal worth of all employees. And that was really to reflect the inclusive culture that we really strive to maintain and support here. But the mission lays out a number of tenets, and the number of tenets in that mission speak to how we serve our patients, how we operate together, and then how we aim to have a value to society and make a fair profit in the process.
So talk to me a little bit about that. It sounds like your mission statement is pretty deeply connected to the business model and the way that you guys operate. Has there ever been pushback or downsides or maybe conflicts between the business making money aspect of it and the alignment of that mission?
I think what's nice about it is that the tenets of our mission, of which there are 6, right now, and I'll hit them really, really quickly and then answer your question more directly, Danny.
Okay.
I mean, the first around contributing to human welfare through alleviating pain, restoring health, and extending life. That's the most foundational part that most employees could speak to. The second speaks to really growing in the areas where we have strength, maximum strength around biomedical engineering. The third around quality of our products and honesty and dedication. But the fourth around making a fair profit on our operations to meet our obligations, sustain growth, and reach our goals. So there is not a conflict between a profit motive and a mission motive here because those are intertwined. We believe the way to create a viable company and to contribute is to have a fair profit through the work. So I think the mission had a lot of foresight in resolving that potential conflict for us.
I really like that. I think we've talked to 4 or 5 people. I think you're one of the first that has incorporated that idea of making profits right into the mission statement.
We'll talk a little bit later about kind of some of the other aspects of profit and purpose and how that works at Medtronic. But can you talk to us, just kind of stepping back a little bit, about, you mentioned this constitution, as it were, and I love that idea because it's so grounding. Can you talk about why that was the case? What was the rationale for that from the very beginning?
When the mission was written way back in the day, I think it was written with a lot of foresight. And when I'd have to look up for you the size of the company when the mission was written, but I'm guessing it was at or about 1,000 employees. And it was really our founder's vision. Earl Bakken, who was a pioneer in this space and deeply cared about serving patients and deeply cared about the physician relationship as well, right? I think he was witnessing the growth of the company and seeing the opportunity and seeing the potential, and felt the need to, at that point in time, make a declarative statement about who we would become and what we would do. So I think it really just comes from that place of establishing a stake in the ground that is immovable, and it's something we would all be guided towards.
Yeah, we talk about it in the research as the North Star for the organization.
I think that's right. And it's in the language here, right? If you see a PowerPoint deck that talks about an organizational strategy, or you see a PowerPoint deck that talks about a market opportunity, 9 out of 10 times, there's going to be a reference in that deck to which of the 6 tenets of the mission we're connecting to and how we're driving it. And I've seen in my limited tenure here so far, especially during COVID, where it's been a challenging business environment, right? And we've had to make a lot of choices. I've seen people on Zoom, of course, make explicit references to the mission when we got into a tough spot about a decision, and really lean on it and use it not in a trite way, not in a cliche way, but in a real way to get everybody to pull back and zoom out and think about the choices we're making. So it's been real. It's been real here that way.
Yeah, because I'd love to know what this really looks and feels like. So in kind of a generic way, could you take us in the room and like share with us, how was the conversation going and how did you use that mission or how did that person use that mission to reground the team and refocus on what was?
I think, oftentimes in any group decision-making process, we all know about some of the risks of those, right? There's the groupthink risk. There's the risk of being myopic. There's the, fear of challenging the loudest voice in the room, all those things that happen in decision-making processes. And, people who work on group relations over the years have worked on lots of different ways to help that. I mean, I remember in an old role, we had paddles and one paddle said, I have an idea, or let's move on. And, people would use those as almost psychologically safe hacks to help in those conversations. But where I've seen it used here is to unstick a decision or unstick less, fully embracing thinking. And it's a leveler, right? Anybody at any level in that meeting can make that statement because it's not about them, it's about us. And it lets people tap into it and step back. And, you see on Zoom, you see people, lean back in their home office chairs when someone reminds everybody of what we're doing there in a really respectful and I think useful way.
And I love that phrase that you just had. It's not about them, it's about us. It's really that connection to the community and that connection to what we're all trying to achieve together.
That's right. And I mean, the longest tenured person at Medtronic has been here for 41 years. The mission was written before they started, right? So none of us wrote this. All of us are stewards of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a beautiful imagery, I think. We know that Medtronic was recently included in Fortune magazine's annual Change the World list for things like increasing ventilator production fivefold from pre-pandemic production numbers. Also doing things like open sourcing design, which is a huge thing for an R&D company. Also focusing on carbon neutrality and gender and ethnicity pay equity. So clearly this is something you all are living and breathing as you've mentioned and have been recognized for doing that. I'd love to know about you've mentioned several times you're newish to this organization, 7 months in. So can you share with us some of your initial impressions when thinking about kind of everything this organization is doing when you think about it purpose perspective?
Just to hit on those examples that you shared there, I think for a lot of us, the open sourcing of one of our ventilators inside of the heights of COVID was something that, all of us took a lot of pride in. And understanding how that decision was made. It was made, I think, over a weekend in a matter of hours. It wasn't something that there was a ton of huge internal debate around. Should we do it? I think, we saw that opportunity to help and saw that it was the right choice, the right thing to do. Didn't run a bunch of complex financial models around it, right? Leaned on the parts of the mission and said, this is the right thing to do. Let's go ahead and do it. So I think for a lot of us, that was a really nice kind of re-recruitment moment to see the company step up in that way. And for me, before I even started, I attended, what's called the Employee Holiday Program. And that's something that happens on an annual basis where, we bring physicians, we bring some of our own experts, and we bring patients to our campus in Minneapolis. And, imagine the atrium of a big office building filled with thousands of folding chairs with, punch and cookies in the back and, see stories of real impact to these patients' lives and see our own, senior leaders, have that tear welling up in their eye, listening to the impact of the work. For me, sitting there in that room, it kind of clicked on how the work we do from a talent perspective, if we get it right and we unleash that discretionary effort, we unleash that ability to speak up, move forward our cycle time with better management and better learning, we can get that stuff out the door to more people more quickly and help. And I can just see that value chain in that context. Mm-hmm. So that's how it felt real to me.
Yeah. One of the things we've been talking about with the research is how purpose can it gives really in many ways a reason for an organization to exist. We're in this world with more gig economy, with all these different things that we're doing, but an organization allows us to come together, to be together, and to do more than we can as individuals. And so I think what you're sharing is really kind of the clear articulation of what that looks like and feels like, really why we work in organizations.
I think that's right. And I think that, our business is one that lends itself to the, altruistic higher calling, right? But every business has a way and has encapsulating that purpose and that meaning is really important for people, regardless of the business that you're in, for sure.
I remember one of the very first times I heard about Medtronic really, really early on in my career was that very meeting that you were talking about, Jeff, where everybody got together and sort of reaffirmed the reason that they were all there. It's stuck in my mind like nothing else. It's kind of great. Talk to us a little bit about stakeholder relationships. So you mentioned this meeting where patients and doctors and everybody's sort of getting together. When we think about purpose, we think about sort of a broader purpose. Obviously, we have responsibilities to our shareholders, but what other stakeholder relationships are important to how you all do business?
I do think that we think about this in almost that balanced scorecard kind of a way. That we have our patients and our physicians obviously being our primary stakeholders in terms of the value that we create, and that's what we're playing. That's what we're in the game for, right? But I've seen us as a business take an even bigger voice on societal matters, especially being a Minnesota-based company, Minnesota operationally based company, although we're held outside the U.S. and Ireland, having the conversation and emphasis, as a result of the calls for social justice. So I've seen the company really step up in, frankly, bolder ways than I anticipated in a really nice way over the last few months. And that obviously societal lens is one where we're taking a lot of a bigger step. But now I've also seen really good relations with the analyst community and the investor community. Today is actually our biennial investor conference. Right before this, I was watching our leaders speak about our pipeline and clinical trial successes. So I think you see here a real nice balance of everybody knows we're in it for the patients, but not just looking at Wall Street as a stakeholder, looking at governments around the world, looking at these broader societal issues as areas where we want to play more, want to have a louder voice.
Very cool. So can we talk a little bit, you've mentioned a few times, you've seen it click, you've seen the talent model click, the importance of the work that you all do click. Can we talk a little bit more about what that looks like from the HR perspective? So how is HR involved in the purpose-driven aspects of the organization?
I think what's really interesting about it is HR's not pushing it. Because the mission has been around for so long and because everyone knows about it, HR is not the voice for the mission. Our senior leaders really are the consistent voice for the mission. There's a lot of symbolism around it. So one thing that we think about with companies, right, is what are the rituals and symbols that give that kind of meaning? And there's something here called the mission medallion ceremony. And every employee within the first couple of years of their tenure receives this heavy 2-pound circular medallion and is given that by a senior leader. Just has a bit of a ceremony around reminding everybody what we're doing and why we're doing it. So it's those kinds of institutional things that have been in the water for a long time that continue to happen. And sure, from an HR perspective, we help logistically with some of those things. But those are really business processes that are tied to our senior leadership. There's not, coming from HR, a mission project. There's not a mission task force or a mission leader. It just lives. It is not constructed, governed, and budgeted, I guess is one way to say it.
Yeah, that's interesting. The ceremony that you mentioned. One of the things we, again, talk about in the research is how, in many ways, one of the big shifts that we see overall and certainly kind of American society is a move away from some of the traditional places that have given us meaning. So most obviously the churches, civic organizations and the like, and how a belief that organizations are increasingly giving people a way to fulfill that purpose. And so if you think about, that ceremony in that context, it kind of reaffirms that, that this is something that is in some way, it sounds like a rite of passage at Medtronic, something that is critical to kind of the culture and the sense of purpose and deriving that sense of purpose from being at Medtronic.
I think that's right. I think your observation is spot on about some of those